May.
Ethan Hayes fixed things
cute.
for a living. That was the simplest way to describe his life. Broken cargo haulers, damaged docking systems, malfunctioning life support units. If it had wires, circuits, engines, or moving parts, Ethan could usually repair it. His frontier station sat so far from the Imperial core that most maps barely acknowledged its existence, which was exactly why he liked it. Nobody important ever came there. Nobody powerful ever visited. Nobody expected anything from him beyond keeping ships operational. That changed on a quiet morning when every warning system on the station activated at once. At first, Ethan assumed pirates, then a military inspection, then perhaps a navigation error. The truth was far stranger. An Imperial fleet had arrived. Not one ship, not 10. Hundreds, massive warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, surrounding the station so completely that stars disappeared behind metallic hulls. Every resident rushed toward observation decks. Dock workers stopped working. Pilots abandoned conversations. Merchants forgot their negotiations. Nobody understood why an entire royal fleet would appear at a forgotten station on the edge of explored space. Ethan didn't understand either. Unfortunately, the answer arrived less than 20 minutes later. A direct communication request appeared on every station display. The sender identification froze the entire station. Imperial Royal Command. The Queen herself. Ethan stared at the screen. There had to be some mistake. People like him didn't receive communications from rulers of galactic empires, yet moments later, security personnel arrived outside his workshop. They looked almost as nervous as he felt. "The Queen wishes to meet you." Ethan laughed. Nobody else did. That was when he realized they were serious. An hour later, he stood inside the largest docking bay on the station. Thousands of residents watched from every available level. News traveled quickly in isolated places. The enormous doors opened. Silence spread throughout the crowd. A royal transport descended slowly toward the landing platform. Its polished surface reflected station lights like liquid silver. Military guards emerged first, then advisors, then members of the royal household. Finally, the Queen appeared. Ethan had seen her image countless times before. None of those images captured her presence. She carried herself with absolute confidence. The confidence of someone accustomed to commanding fleets and deciding the fate of entire worlds. Yet surprisingly, she wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking directly at him. That immediately made Ethan uncomfortable. The Queen approached. Behind her walked 3 young women, all clearly related, all clearly royal, and all completely different from one another. The first moved like a soldier, every step precise, every movement controlled. She studied everything around her as if evaluating potential threats. The second appeared fascinated by the station itself. Her eyes constantly examined nearby technology, scanning equipment and infrastructure with obvious curiosity. The third seemed completely uninterested in protocol. She was smiling, looking around excitedly, almost enjoying the confusion surrounding them. The Queen stopped directly in front of Ethan. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Thousands watched. Waiting, Ethan finally cleared his throat. "Your Majesty." The Queen smiled. "Engineer Ethan Hayes." The fact that she knew his name didn't make him feel better. In fact, it made him feel worse. People with her resources didn't learn names accidentally. The Queen glanced toward the 3 young women behind her. Then, back to Ethan. "I have a request." Ethan immediately wished she had said demand instead. Requests from rulers were often far more dangerous. "What kind of request?" The Queen's smile widened slightly. The simple kind. Ethan doubted that. Strongly, the Queen gestured toward her daughters. "I would like you to look after them." Silence. Absolute silence. Ethan blinked. Then blinked again. Surely he had misunderstood. Around him, thousands of witnesses appeared equally confused. The Queen remained perfectly calm. As in, Ethan stopped. The sentence refused to continue. The Queen finished it for him, as in care for them. Still silence. The first princess looked mildly annoyed. The second appeared interested in his reaction. The third seemed moments away from laughing. Ethan searched desperately for a reasonable explanation. None appeared. Why me? The question escaped before he could stop it. Several royal advisors looked horrified. Apparently people weren't supposed to ask the Queen why. To her credit, she answered anyway. Because you are human. That explained absolutely nothing. The Queen continued. Humans solve problems differently. Ethan wasn't sure whether that was praise or criticism. Before he could ask another question, the Queen delivered the part that would soon shake the galaxy. You will care for them for 1 year. 1 year. Not a week. Not a month. An entire year. The crowd exchanged confused looks. Ethan's brain was still attempting to process the first part of the request. Then the Queen leaned slightly closer. Her next words were spoken quietly, yet somehow everyone heard them. And when I return, the entire docking bay waited. I expect them to choose their future husbands. For a moment, reality stopped functioning. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Ethan was fairly certain his brain had completely shut down. Then the reaction began. Gasps, shocked whispers, stunned expressions. Several station officials looked ready to faint. The 3 princesses reacted differently. The first princess looked irritated. The second appeared surprised. The third nearly laughed out loud. The Queen, meanwhile, seemed entirely unconcerned. As if she had not just dropped the most explosive statement in recent imperial history. Ethan finally found his voice. Future husbands? The Queen nodded. Yes, that was apparently all the explanation she intended to provide. Within minutes, the news escaped the station. Within hours, it spread across the empire. By the end of the day, noble houses, governors, military commanders, and political analysts were discussing nothing else. Some believed the Queen was arranging marriages. Others suspected a succession strategy. A few conspiracy theorists claimed humanity had secretly become part of the royal bloodline. Nobody knew the truth. Not even Ethan. But while the galaxy debated what the Queen meant, she prepared to leave. The royal transport was already waiting. The fleet was making departure calculations. The 3 princesses stood beside Ethan, apparently staying exactly where they were. Then, the Queen approached him one final time. Her expression changed. The confidence remained. The authority remained. But now something else appeared. Concern. Real concern. She lowered her voice so only he could hear. And for the first time that day, she sounded less like a ruler and more like a mother. Trust no one from my court. Ethan felt a chill run through him. Before he could ask what she meant, the Queen stepped away. Moments later, the transport departed. The fleet followed. And just like that, the most powerful woman in the galaxy vanished, leaving her 3 daughters standing beside a confused human engineer, and leaving Ethan with one terrifying question. Why would a queen who commanded thousands of worlds trust a frontier mechanic more than her own court? The first week was chaos. Not because the princesses demanded luxury. Because they didn't know how to exist without it. For their entire lives, hundreds of attendants had handled every detail around them. Meals appeared automatically. Schedules were created for them. Security followed every movement. Decisions were filtered through advisors before they ever reached them. Now all of that was gone. The frontier station had neither the resources nor the patience for royal treatment. Ethan made that clear immediately. If they wanted food, they could walk to the dining hall. If they wanted transportation, they could use the station shuttles like everyone else. If they wanted respect, they would earn it. The first princess hated that answer. The second found it fascinating. The third thought it was hilarious. To Ethan's surprise, none of them complained for long. Life on the frontier had a way of correcting unrealistic expectations. People worked because things needed doing, not because titles demanded obedience. That alone was a new experience for the royal daughters. The warrior princess struggled first. She was accustomed to giving orders. Station workers ignored rank unless it solved problems. When a cargo loader malfunctioned, nobody cared about her bloodline. They cared whether she could help. For the first time, she encountered people who respected competence more than status. The scientist princess adapted faster. She spent hours studying station systems, power grids, docking controls, life support networks. She quickly discovered that frontier technology succeeded because it was practical, not elegant. Many human solutions looked inefficient, yet somehow they kept working. That contradiction fascinated her. The youngest princess adapted best of all. She spoke with merchants, mechanics, pilots, families, people who would never be allowed near an imperial palace. For the first time, she interacted with ordinary citizens without layers of protocol standing between them. The experience changed her quickly. Weeks passed. Then the first warning arrived. A diplomatic vessel requested docking clearance. Nothing unusual on the surface. Yet Ethan immediately noticed inconsistencies. The ship belonged to a noble family from the imperial core, one of the wealthiest in the empire. There was absolutely no reason for them to visit an insignificant frontier station. The explanation they provided was even worse. A courtesy visit. Nobody traveled dozens of light years for courtesy. Ethan approved temporary docking anyway. Refusing would create attention. Allowing it created opportunity to observe. The visitors arrived carrying gifts. Expensive gifts. Rare gifts. Royal gifts. Everything was addressed to the princesses. Jewelry, historical artifacts, personal invitations, marriage proposals. The last category appeared most frequently. The noble houses weren't wasting time. News of the Queen's statement had spread everywhere. Powerful families were already positioning themselves for potential alliances. The proposals became constant. Every week brought more. Every week the offers became larger. Some promised wealth. Others promised military support. Several practically offered entire planetary systems. The princesses found the situation increasingly irritating. Ethan found it suspicious. Because nobody seemed interested in the daughters themselves. Only what marrying them might provide. That realization bothered him. It bothered the princesses even more. The Queen's warning returned to his thoughts frequently. Trust no one from my court. At first, he assumed she meant political manipulation. Then, someone tried to kill her eldest daughter. The attack happened during what should have been a routine maintenance inspection near one of the station's transit corridors. A disguised service drone suddenly changed behavior. Its systems had been altered remotely. Instead of performing diagnostics, it accelerated directly toward the princess. Most people froze. Ethan didn't. Years of emergency repair work had trained him to react before thinking. He spotted the modification instantly, not because he was a security expert, because he knew machines. He recognized movement patterns that shouldn't exist. The drone's navigation system had been rewritten. Ethan grabbed a nearby magnetic control unit and overloaded the drone's guidance array. The machine crashed into a bulkhead seconds before impact. The explosion shook the corridor. But the princess survived. Security teams arrived moments later. Investigations began immediately. Officially, it was called sabotage. Unofficially, everyone knew what it really was. An assassination attempt. The station changed after that. The princesses changed too. The threat was no longer theoretical. Someone wanted them dead. And someone possessed enough resources to reach them despite imperial secrecy. The eldest princess stopped viewing the frontier as exile. The scientists stopped treating the situation like an interesting puzzle. Even the youngest princess lost some of her carefree attitude. For the first time, they understood why their mother had sent them away. Not for education. Not for diplomacy. Protection. Several days after the attack, Ethan received an encrypted package hidden inside a routine maintenance update. The encryption level alone revealed its origin. Royal authorization, directly from the Queen. No intermediaries, no official channels, just a private message. He opened it carefully. The recording activated immediately. The Queen appeared. Tired. Far more tired than she had seemed during her visit. That detail alone concerned him. "If you are seeing this," she began, "events are progressing faster than expected." Ethan listened closely. The Queen continued. "There are factions within the Empire that believe the succession should be controlled, not inherited. Certain noble houses have spent years building support. They believe the throne belongs to influence rather than legitimacy." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. The Queen wasn't describing political disagreement. She was describing a coup. The message confirmed it moments later. Several powerful families are coordinating their efforts. Publicly, they remain loyal. Privately, they are preparing for transition. The princesses listened beside him. None of them looked surprised, only disappointed, as if this merely confirmed fears they already carried. The Queen continued. "I sent my daughters away because I trust humans more than the people attempting to stand beside me." That statement spoke volumes. The ruler of the galaxy's largest empire trusted an engineer on a forgotten station more than her own aristocracy. Then came the final part of the message, the part that changed everything. The Queen's expression hardened. "If I fail to return, the room became silent. If I fail to return, my daughters may be the last legitimate heirs to the Empire." The recording ended. No farewell, no explanation, just silence. Ethan stared at the dark screen. The princesses did the same, because now they understood the truth. Their mother had not sent them away to prepare for the future. She had sent them away to survive it. And somewhere inside the Empire, powerful people were no longer trying to influence succession. They were trying to seize it. The message changed everything. Before it, the princesses had been hiding. After it, they started paying attention, not to threats, to themselves. Because if the Queen was right, then one day they might inherit more than titles. They might inherit responsibility for an empire standing on the edge of internal collapse. Ethan never gave speeches about leadership. He never lectured them about politics. Most days, he simply lived his life. Oddly enough, that became the lesson. The eldest princess noticed it first. On the frontier, nobody cared how powerful someone was. People cared whether they solved problems. A station engineer who repaired life support systems mattered more than a noble who owned 10 planets. Status couldn't keep oxygen flowing. Competence could. That realization bothered her at first. For years, she had been trained to command. Commanders gave orders. Subordinates obeyed. That was how authority worked, at least inside the Empire. The frontier worked differently. Respect moved upward from actions, not downward from titles. One day, a cargo transport suffered a reactor malfunction. The repair team was understaffed. Without hesitation, Ethan joined them. No ceremony, no announcement, just work. The princess watched him spend hours beside technicians who technically ranked beneath him in every possible way. Nobody treated him as superior. Nobody treated him as inferior. They treated him as part of the team. Afterward, she asked him why. His answer stayed with her. Because the reactor doesn't care who's important. That simple sentence accomplished what years of royal education never had. She slowly stopped trying to lead from above. She started leading beside people instead. The second princess faced a different challenge. Logic had always been her strength. Numbers, systems, predictions, variables. She trusted calculations more than emotions. Humans confused her, especially frontier humans. They routinely made decisions that appeared irrational. They took risks for friends, shared resources without strategic advantage, helped strangers with no expectation of reward. From a purely logical perspective, much of it made little sense. Then she started studying outcomes instead of actions. That changed everything. Communities with stronger trust recovered faster from crises. Teams with better personal relationships solved problems more efficiently. People who cared about one another adapted better under pressure. Emotion wasn't interfering with logic, it was strengthening it. The discovery fascinated her. One evening she admitted something Ethan never expected to hear. "I spent most of my life believing feelings created weakness." Ethan looked up from a repair console. "And now?" She considered the question carefully. "Now I think ignoring them creates blindness." That answer made him smile. Because she had figured it out herself. The youngest princess changed most dramatically. She had always been curious. But curiosity without responsibility often becomes recklessness. Life on the station taught her the difference. She spent time with pilots, merchants, families, workers. For the first time she experienced lives untouched by royal privilege. People struggled. People failed. People sacrificed. Yet they kept moving forward. Not because anyone ordered them to. Because others depended on them. Gradually she stopped chasing excitement for its own sake. She started understanding consequences. Real consequences. The kind that affected ordinary people. Months passed. The three sisters became different versions of themselves. Not less royal. More complete. And throughout it all, Ethan never tried to shape them into rulers. He treated them like individuals. That alone was revolutionary. Inside the imperial court, almost everyone viewed them as future political assets. Potential alliances, future marriages, strategic opportunities. Ethan never did. He expected them to make decisions, accept mistakes, learn from outcomes. The freedom felt strange at first, then valuable, eventually essential. The sisters began noticing something else. Most major decisions in the empire were designed around preserving power, not improving lives. That distinction became impossible to ignore once they stepped outside the system. For the first time, they understood why humans were respected despite possessing less territory, fewer fleets, and shorter histories. Humans adapted, questioned assumptions, challenged traditions when those traditions stopped serving people. That mindset spread quietly among the sisters, and somewhere deep inside the imperial core, the conspiracy continued growing. Reports arrived regularly. Political instability increased. Several noble houses openly criticized royal authority. Military loyalties became uncertain. Trade blocs began choosing sides. The empire was drifting toward confrontation. Then the breakthrough arrived. Unexpected, accidental, and devastating. The youngest princess discovered irregular financial transfers while reviewing communications traffic. At first it seemed insignificant, a routine data anomaly. The second princess examined it further. Patterns emerged. Funding networks. Hidden accounts. Coordinated payments. The information connected dozens of influential figures. The eldest princess recognized several names immediately. Some belonged to families publicly supporting the queen. Others belonged to military officials claiming neutrality. Together they formed something much larger than political disagreement. Evidence. Real evidence. For weeks the sisters investigated quietly, cross-referencing records, following transactions, comparing communications. The deeper they looked, the worse it became. The assassination attempt, the political maneuvering, the succession pressure. Everything pointed toward the same group. The conspiracy wasn't fragmented, it was organized, and it reached levels of power nobody had imagined. One evening they gathered around a collection of data projections. Nobody spoke for several moments, because the conclusion was obvious. They finally knew who was responsible. Not just for the attack, not just for the coup, for all of it. The eldest princess looked toward her sisters, then toward Ethan. "The evidence is enough." The scientist nodded. "More than enough." The youngest princess exhaled slowly. Years of hidden ambition, years of planning, years of betrayal, all mapped clearly before them. Ethan studied the information. One thought immediately surfaced. If they could uncover this much from a frontier station, then the conspirators would eventually realize what they had found, And when that happened, they wouldn't send spies, or gifts, or marriage proposals. They would send something far worse. Because now the daughters possessed the one thing every coup fears most. Proof changed the balance of power. For nearly a year, the conspirators operated from the shadows. Influence, money, political pressure. Assassination attempts disguised as accidents. Everything depended on secrecy. Now secrecy was gone. The three princesses possessed enough evidence to expose some of the most powerful figures in the empire. The problem was surviving long enough to reveal it. The warning signs appeared immediately. Encrypted communications increased. Unknown ships entered nearby sectors. Several intelligence reports simply vanished before reaching their destinations. The conspirators knew something was wrong. They didn't know exactly what, but they knew control was slipping. Ethan expected another attack. Instead, news arrived first. The Queen was returning. Alive, the announcement spread across the empire within hours. Markets reacted. Political factions adjusted positions. Entire noble houses suddenly became much quieter than before. For the first time in months, uncertainty shifted toward the conspirators. The Queen had survived whatever storm had been building around her. And now, she was coming home. An emergency imperial assembly was called immediately. Attendance was mandatory. Governors, military leaders, noble families, diplomatic representatives. Every major power center in the empire would be present. The entire galaxy watched. Many expected a succession announcement. Others expected engagement arrangements. Most still believed the Queen's daughters had spent the year preparing for marriage alliances. Nobody understood what had actually happened. The princesses traveled with Ethan to the assembly. Not as protected heirs, as witnesses carrying evidence. The difference mattered. When they arrived, the atmosphere felt tense. Too many smiles. Too much politeness. The kind of behavior people display when they are hiding fear. The Queen entered last. The chamber rose instantly. She looked stronger than Ethan expected, not untouched by recent events, but unbroken. The sight alone visibly unsettled several influential nobles. That told Ethan everything he needed to know. The Queen took her place and surveyed the assembly. Then her attention shifted toward her daughters. A small smile appeared, not because they were safe, because she immediately recognized they were different. The year had changed them. The assembly began. Formal introductions, political statements, ceremonial procedures. Then the moment everyone expected finally arrived. The Queen stood. One sentence silenced the chamber. A year ago, I entrusted my daughters to a human engineer. Thousands watched. Waiting, the Queen continued. I also stated that upon my return, they would choose their future husbands. The room tightened immediately. This was the moment countless families had spent months preparing for. Political alliances, marriage negotiations, succession strategies. Entire fortunes depended on what happened next. The Queen turned toward her daughters. You may now make your choices. Silence. The eldest princess stepped forward first. Every noble house watched carefully. She spoke clearly. I choose no husband. Shock spread immediately. Before anyone could react, she continued. I will not enter a political marriage designed to strengthen factions rather than families. Murmurs erupted throughout the chamber. Several nobles looked horrified. Others looked confused. The second princess stepped forward. I also choose no husband. The chamber grew louder. I refuse to become a diplomatic transaction. More whispers. More disbelief. Then the youngest princess stepped forward. A smile touched her face, the same smile she often wore on the frontier station. Confident, free, I choose no husband either. Now the assembly erupted completely. Arguments, questions, outrage, the reaction spread through every level of the chamber. The Queen raised one hand. Instant silence returned. Then she asked the question everyone wanted answered. Why? The eldest princess answered first. For most of my life, People valued my title more than my character. The second spoke next. Most alliances offered to us were built on advantage, not respect. Then the youngest finished. For the first time, someone treated us like people instead of assets. The chamber became quiet again, because everyone understood exactly who they meant. The human engineer standing silently beside them. The Queen looked toward Ethan briefly. Then, back toward her daughters. There was pride in her expression. Genuine pride. But the real surprise was still coming. The eldest princess activated a data projection. Thousands of documents appeared. Financial records. Communications. Transfer logs. Evidence. The second princess expanded the presentation. Additional connections emerged. Names. Organizations. Hidden agreements. The youngest princess delivered the final blow. Assassination plans. Succession strategies. Coordination networks. Every piece connected, every accusation supported, every conspiracy exposed. The assembly watched in stunned silence. The evidence was overwhelming. The individuals responsible could not deny it. Several attempted anyway. It lasted only minutes. Security forces moved quickly. Arrests began across the chamber. Powerful nobles who once believed themselves untouchable suddenly discovered otherwise. The coup collapsed in real time. Not because fleets fired weapons. Not because armies fought battles. Because truth finally became public. When the chaos ended, the Queen addressed the assembly once more. Her attention remained on her daughters. "You have changed." The eldest nodded. Yes, the second nodded as well. "So have our priorities." The youngest smiled. "For the better." The Queen looked toward Ethan. For several moments she said nothing. Then she asked the question that mattered most. "What did he teach you?" The chamber waited. The eldest princess answered first. "He taught us that leadership is service." The second continued. "He taught us that intelligence without empathy creates failure." The youngest finished. "He taught us that freedom means making your own choices and accepting responsibility for them." The silence that followed felt different. Not tense. Respectful. Because everyone understood what had happened. The Queen had sent her daughters away for protection. Instead, they returned transformed. Not by royal tutors. Not by political advisors. By ordinary human values. The reforms began within months. Succession traditions changed. Future heirs gained the right to choose their own paths. Political marriages lost much of their influence. The imperial court became harder to manipulate. And throughout the galaxy, one story spread faster than any official announcement. The story of a human engineer who spent a year doing something no royal institution had managed to accomplish. He taught 3 future rulers how to think for themselves. Years later, historians would debate the most important moment of that era. Some pointed to the failed coup. Others pointed to the reforms. The Queen always gave the same answer. "The galaxy expected a human to teach my daughters who they should marry." A small smile would appear. Instead, he taught them they never needed anyone else to make that choice. And in that moment, the Empire learned something humanity had understood for centuries. The strongest leaders are not the ones who control people's futures. They are the ones who give others the freedom to choose their own.